I'm Laura Hettiger, live at Command Post in Jennings once again, and Captain Ron Johnson is about ready to step to the podium for another live news update. Can you pinpoint exactly what the change can be related to?
The change is related to a lot of hard work.
You just heard from Captain Ron Johnson again, very similar to what he discussed last night. He started off last night's news update by saying tonight was a good night. He just said the same thing, and hopefully you could see some of the evidence he had out on the table. A sock puppet that he said a child in Ferguson gave him. Also crayons and coloring books, very different from the handguns, the Molotov cocktails we saw just 72 hours ago. Of course, we'll have much more information on what happened overnight in Ferguson on News 4 this morning. Remember, it does go on early, starting at 4 a.m. For now, reporting live at Command Post, Laura Hettiger, News 4. Then he described how if a bullet came at us from one of the protesters or one of the criminals in the group, keep in mind that bullets do ricochet, and that is when we said, we're out of here. We came back to Command Post, approaching what seems to be the clerk. Now, Claire, this is really my first time looking at this. This is a large packet. Let me explain this packet. Not everyone gets it. KMOV did a special sunshine request to get all of the information about what happened in Ferguson last Saturday. Let me walk you through the timeline once again. I cover a lot of crime, specifically for News 4 this morning, so I see these officers a lot, and I see them in all different areas of St. Louis City and St. Louis County. So to see them all right here in North St. Louis, all right here in Ferguson, you know, so many of the officers aren't in their typical positions, whether that's South County, West County, or even North County. They're not always stationed right here. So there's been a huge strain really on the department everywhere. From the time Brown committed that strong arm robbery to when he was dead is less than 15 minutes. 300 officers worked all those scenes last night. We know at least 12 businesses were targeted and at least 32 people have been arrested. Police do think as the day continues that number could go up. We also know 2 police officers were injured. The police say, in fact, urine was thrown on many officers. They also say there were 47 arrests overnight. 31 people were arrested last night. That is the most recent update as of 2 a.m. But I can also tell you it's just a very different feeling out here at Command Post. In the last hour, Missouri State Troopers came up to each of the media outlets, had them move at least 200 feet back. You see the new crime scene tape behind me, and there's a lot of tension in the air, and really a lot of that tension is actually being directed at the media. There's a roll call going on behind me. This is my 5th morning in a row here, and this is the first time it's looked like that. Police in both blue and brown uniforms. That shows that county police are now working with Missouri Highway Patrol. I'm joined right now by Officer Brian Shellman, and just about 10 minutes ago he said he was talking to one of his colleagues, and he actually told you that he was shot at last night. What do you think when you hear that?
Yeah, it's scary.
Compared to this time yesterday, there were 47 arrests, so definitely progress on the streets of Ferguson. We got here just after 11 o'clock last night. Since then, we have not heard any police sirens. We did not see the chopper overhead, and only 7 people were arrested last night.
That 5 o'clock curfew was lifted. Seen any activity out there?
Yeah, it's a really big deal, Claire. I did see some activity about, 15-20 minutes ago. We saw several troopers getting in their cars and then going back out, but really no activity right now. But I'm sure a lot of people just waking up in Ferguson are also wondering, what happened to my town overnight? Let's go ahead and show you.
We really wanted to bring you a first-hand account of what it was like to be in the middle of all of this overnight. So News 4's Laura Hettiger started working at 8 o'clock last night. She's the only morning reporter who really spent a lot of her night on the streets in Ferguson among the crowds of people. Laura kicks off our team coverage this morning live in Ferguson. Laura.
And Claire, it was really an eye-opening night for me, because when I got to that protest, I was expecting to see so many of the images many of our viewers have grown accustomed to seeing this week. Police in tactical gear, violent riots, and really mass confusion. From what I saw, though, that was not the case.
You see, ain't nobody out here fighting. Right. Everybody's out here for Michael Brown. Everybody's kind of running around doing their own thing, but they're not angry. Last night they were angry and they were ready to they're ready to fight.
From fighting on Wednesday to a sense of freedom on Thursday.
I thought it was going to be violent. I expected police officers. I expected like it was the night before, but it's not like that. It's much more peaceful.
A parade of cars, loud honking, and large crowds at night might not seem all that peaceful to you, but it sure is to all of these folks in Ferguson.
The protesters are the ones that are keeping the peace, that are controlling traffic. And that's how it should be done.
In the entire 3.5 hours I reported through the protest, there was only one moment that I and everyone else I talked to was scared. We just so happened to catch it on camera.
I live in Greenville now, and I work in Kirkwood.
3 distinctive pops sound so familiar to so many in this area. Luckily, turned out to be a false alarm.
That was firecrackers, everybody.
Protesters tell us that they are sorry about the looting and the damage to all the businesses, but they also say the only reason all this is able to happen is because of a change in the way Ferguson is being policed.
People were just saying thanks for allowing us to speak and without fear of tear gas and some of those things. And I want them to speak and I want to hear what they say. But I also ask them we have to do it in a peaceful way.
That is Captain Ron Johnson, now the man in charge of all of this, and he's going to have a busy day. Why? Because county police just told me there were 5 incidents overnight in which they could not respond. I'll explain more of that coming up at 6:30. Emily and Claire, back to you.
And the latest from police. Laura?
And Maurice, I was at that news conference. It wrapped up just in the last 2.5 hours. And Captain Ron Johnson, you just heard from, was full of emotion. At one point, I thought he was even going to wipe tears away from his eyes. His voice was quivering as he once again described what he calls attacks on police. And we are going to show you exactly what he is talking about. They're images that so many of you have grown accustomed to seeing over the last week and a half. Tear gas being fired once again and really mass chaos. Now, police tell us that 2 people were shot overnight. When I asked about their conditions during that news conference, they could not give me an update. But Captain Johnson says really the worst attacks came as the SWAT truck was responding to one of those shooting victims. He tells me that when officers got there in the SWAT truck, they came under fire. He says he even heard officers screaming on the scanners as they were under gunfire. But Captain Johnson says no officer fired a single shot last night. Captain Johnson, though, also blames some of the media for making things worse. He says everyone right now must work together.
We're going to make this neighborhood whole. We are going to make this community whole, and we're going to do it together. And I am not going to let the criminals that have come out here from across this country or live in this community define this neighborhood and define what we're going to do to make it right.
When he talks about those criminals from across the country, 31 people were arrested last night. He says those people came as far as New York all the way to California. And he also says that right now the world is watching every move of police. And he also says the world is watching every move of the media. I was here for 6 hours last night. I met journalists from South Korea, from China, and from Germany. So yes, the world is watching exactly what is happening here in Ferguson.
Laura Hettiger on the scene as well. And Laura, I want to bring you back into the conversation. What's your update?
Sharon, I just spoke with several officers who can talk to the media from St. Louis County. You might be able to see them walking around. They tell me, quote, "You will never see anything like this again." I was trying to get more information about injuries from overnight. There have been, as you know, and as we've reported, multiple reports of shots being fired. They tell me that they have had 2 injuries that they know of tonight, a male and a female. They tell me the female was shot right around 8:30, and she was around the Quick Trip area. She had a friend drive her to McDonald's, and that is where she was able to be loaded into an ambulance, taken to the hospital. Her injuries, I understand, are relatively minor, definitely non-life threatening. Then they also tell me that there was a male who was shot on Canfield and was also transported to the hospital with non-life threatening injuries. I was over there and saying The curfew is getting ready to begin in minutes. What are you guys going to do to make sure that people follow that curfew? They said obviously they cannot discuss their exact police tactics. They do not want to give anything like that away, but they said they will do what they need to do to make sure that curfew is in place. And as I think you guys have probably been reporting too, they're asking all the media to leave that area, come back to this command post. And I have been out here covering this for the last week. And again, all I can tell you from an eyewitness, this is completely different than anything I have seen yet. We'll send it back to you.
Well, let me follow up, Laura, with what one of the law enforcement officers told you, and I'm quoting from what you said. You'll never see anything like this again. Do you know to what specifically he was referring to when he made that statement?
He was referring to all of this, and that officer has been with the department. I've known him the whole time I've been here. He's been here, I think, 20 plus years. And he said, this is nothing like this has obviously ever happened in St. Louis County, and just to the magnitude.
Right.
All the officers that are out here. I tried getting some type of number on just how many officers are here. He also said that was a tactical thing. They didn't want to discuss exact numbers to give that away to anyone who might be watching, but just looking around, it's in the hundreds. St. Louis County, city out here, basically everyone from St. Charles and all the smaller municipalities. So just a massive response. And he isn't typically on these scenes, and he's walking around with his helmet and his shield because he just said he didn't know what to expect. Might as well grab them from the trunk just in case he needs them tonight.
Well, Laura, that's interesting because Sharon and I were talking earlier